Bart Whitaker is a convicted murderer who orchestrated a horrific plan to kill his family. In 2003, Whitaker, then a student at Sam Houston State University, hired two men to break into his family's home and murder his mother, father, and brother. The motive behind the crime was to inherit his family's wealth, which he believed would solve all his financial problems. However, the crime was discovered, and Whitaker was arrested and put on trial. The case received widespread media attention due to the shocking nature of the crime and the controversy surrounding the death penalty. Thomas Bartlett Whitaker was born on December 31, 1979, to his father Kent, who was the comptroller of a construction company, and his mother Patricia, or Trish as many called her, who worked as an elementary school teacher. During his high school years at Clemens High School, Whitaker's parents bought him multiple luxury vehicles. He pursued higher education at Baylor University in 2001, but later transferred to Sam Houston State University in late 2003. However, Whitaker had lied to his parents about his enrollment status and academic progress, with conflicting reports suggesting that he had either dropped out of Sam Houston months before or was attending as a freshman on academic probation. Despite his dishonesty, his parents continued to fund his studies and even purchased a lakeside townhouse in Willis, Texas, for him to live in. Furthermore, they gifted him a $4,000 Rolex watch just hours before the murders, leading to speculation about their role in enabling his behavior. On December 10, 2003, Thomas Bartlett, or Bart as many called him, Whitaker deceitfully informed his family that he had completed his final university exams and was on track to graduate from Sam Houston. They traveled to the nearby Papado restaurant located in Stafford to enjoy a celebratory dinner. Whitaker's plan to kill his family was carefully orchestrated. He recruited two friends, Chris Brashear and Steve Champagne, to carry out the murder. He promised them a share of his family's wealth and gave them detailed instructions on how to break into the house and kill his family. Brashear, who was dressed entirely in black, including a ski mask, entered the Whitaker family home. Afterward, he staged a burglary and positioned himself near the front door, waiting for the Whitaker family to return home. Upon returning home, just before entering the house, Bart expressed the need to retrieve his cell phone from his car. Bart's brother Kevin was the first to enter the family home and reportedly grinned upon seeing the masked Brashear. However, Brashear promptly shot Kevin in the chest, causing him to collapse to the ground. Patricia was the next target and was shot in the chest as well, also falling to the floor. Kent immediately rushed in and was shot in the shoulder, causing his humerus bone to shatter. Bart subsequently entered the house and staged a struggle with Brashear, deliberately getting shot in his left arm in an effort to deflect any suspicion. Brashear then made his escape through the Whitakers' back door and leaped over the fence into the neighboring yard at the rear. Sadly, Bart's brother Kevin passed away within minutes of being shot, while his mother Patricia also succumbed to her injuries shortly after being airlifted by life flight to Memorial Hermann Hospital. Upon the arrival of the first responders, Bart deliberately misled them by claiming that he believed the gunman was a black individual, with the intention of throwing off suspicion from Brashear. Fortunately, Kent, Bart's father, survived the incident despite losing his wife and son to the shooting. After the crime, Whitaker was living with his father in the family home where the murders took place, when one day he suddenly vanished. An offhand comment from a busboy working in the neighborhood country club gave Whitaker the idea to flee the country. "Why don't you just disappear to Mexico?" the busboy said. "I'll connect you with my family down there." Whitaker left for Mexico in June 2004. He told his father he was going to a club and never returned. Using $3,000 to persuade an acquaintance to assist him, he assumed the name Rudy Rios and found work in a furniture shop in Cerralvo, Mexico. There, he developed a relationship with a woman and concocted a story of service in Afghanistan to explain his gunshot wound. He lived there under the false name for over a year. On September 15, 2005, a capital murder warrant was issued against Whitaker. The acquaintance who had assisted Whitaker to flee became aware of reward money that had been offered for his arrest and communicated Whitaker's whereabouts to the police. Cooperating with U.S. authorities, Mexican authorities arrested Whitaker without incident under immigration charges. In September 2005, Whitaker was handed over to U.S. authorities at the border town of Laredo, Texas, where he was arrested for capital murder. Whitaker was refused a plea bargain in exchange for his admission of guilt by District Attorney John Healy and was instead tried for capital murder. The trial began in March 2007, led by prosecutor Fred Felkman before 400th District Court Judge Clifford Vasick and a Fort Bend County jury. Evidence was presented that Whitaker had recruited two individuals, Steve Champagne and Chris Brashear, ages 24 and 25 at the time of the 2007 trial respectively, Champagne to be the getaway car driver and Brashear to carry out the shootings in Whitaker's plan to murder his immediate family. Early evidence was presented that Whitaker had previously recruited others in abortive plots to murder his family, plots involving a co-conspirator named Adam Hipp, who had attended Clemens High School with Whitaker. At the trial, Hipp stated that he had contacted the Sugar Land Police Department with information about previous plots after he heard about the Whitaker family murders in 2003. He was given immunity from prosecution in exchange for testifying for the prosecution against Whitaker. The early testimony from Hipp described a first Whitaker plan to set a lake house owned by his grandmother on fire to kill his parents, brother, and other relatives. A plan that never went beyond discussions, but one that included a ruse as an element, the defendants coming out of the blaze with burns so that it would appear he had narrowly escaped. Hipp, who admitted on cross-examination that his participation in Whitaker's schemes had been motivated by money. Police testified that Whitaker stood to inherit the family estate, valued at $1 million. Further testified that in December 2000, prior to the murders of which he stood accused, Whitaker had made another preempted plan, this time to ambush his parents and brother as they entered their home after a dinner outing, a plan noted by the Houston Chronicle to be virtually identical to the one that was actually carried out 3 years later. Trial Judge Vasick handling of the prosecution's use of a phone recording between Hipp and Whitaker would become an element of the defense's later appeal of the verdict. In other early testimony, Steve Champagne described Whitaker recruiting him to be the getaway driver for Whitaker's eventual 2003 plan to murder his immediate family, and his testimony included the detail that Whitaker's gunshot wound was a ploy to make it look like he was a victim too. Prosecutors presented evidence that although it wasn't Whitaker who shot his family members, he was responsible for the murders because he played the leading part in the conspiracy to commit the murders. The prosecution's theory of motive focused on financial gain, with evidence variously described as pointing to Whitaker standing to inherit about $1.5 million after the death of his parents and brother, or that he had wanted to capitalize on $1 million life insurance payout. At trial, it was noted that Whitaker had access to an $80,000 trust fund from his grandparents, although he testified that he did not know he could access it. Whitaker denied prosecution claims regarding the insurance profit motive, arguing that the only life insurance policy the family had was for $50,000 on his father's life. Kent Whitaker had already forgiven his son and his co-conspirators for their parts in the murders, and had tried at the time of his son's trial, years earlier, to persuade the jury not to deliver a death sentence. On Friday, March 2, 2007, Prosecutor Fred Felkman and the state of Texas rested the prosecution's case in the capital murder trial for Thomas Bartlett Whitaker's role in the deaths of his brother and mother. Randy McDonald, attorney for the defense, rested their case on the same day, without calling witnesses, and Judge Vasick scheduled closing arguments for the morning of March 5th. After closing arguments, the case went to the jury. After deliberation, the Fort Bend County jury convicted Whitaker of capital murder under the Texas law of parties. The trial had lasted 6 days in total. The jury deliberated for 2 hours and sentenced Whitaker to death. On February 20th, 2018, in a rare decision, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles recommended that the death sentence be commuted to life imprisonment. The 7-member board unanimously recommended clemency to Republican Governor Greg Abbott, the first time it had done so unanimously since 2009. Abbott accepted their recommendation and commuted Whitaker's death sentence, noting that Whitaker had voluntarily and forever waived any and all claims to parole in exchange for a commutation of his sentence from death to life without the possibility of parole. This was the first commutation of such a sentence from Abbott and the first from a Texas governor since 2007. Abbott cited the fact that Whitaker did not fire the gun and that his father, Kent, insists that he would be victimized again if the state put to death his last remaining immediate family member as the reasons for the commutation. Whitaker responded to the commutation of his sentence by saying, "I am thankful for this decision. Not for me, but for my dad."